Welcome to Manga's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 16, The Half-Elf Godkin. The chief pharmacist probably took a different meaning from Suzuki, Satori's, a working adult who considered such things silence. He opened his mouth. It seems like you're dissatisfied. But, I wouldn't even say that I want to know the production process of your potion. I'll spare you that much. Being told not to take even a single record is a little troubling. I do not have confidence in my own ability to remember things. Therefore, would you allow me to take just a few notes so I can remember? What the hell are you saying? The chief pharmacist said, spit flying out of his mouth. I'm gonna make your body remember. As a pharmacist's apprentice, you're receiving instructions so that you can immediately tell how much the amount of what you're holding right now weighs. It felt difficult to answer with, no, I can't do something like that. If that were the case, maybe he should lie. He held no intention of paying lip service to the idea that you mustn't tell lies. There were even times for white lies. Maybe he should say that in this case. He shouldn't tell a lie with ill intent. This is so troublesome. From the flow of the conversation, it appeared that he would become an apprentice and receive special instruction here, but the reason he had come to see a pharmacist was only on a small hunch that he could obtain information if there were any available. He had considered if he was able to obtain even a fragment of the Dark Elves' herbal medicine, and find out if it was more advanced than the Sorcerer Kingdoms, potentially importing it in some way, like sending out technical intern trainees. As a part of that plan, they would bring back the technology they learned and research it in pursuit of pharmaceuticals. It wasn't as if Ainz himself wanted to beg to be instructed on the subject. Frankly speaking, he had said the price was information, but even if it were to be in the form of taking back a single bottle of a potion made here that had value, and then handing that over to Inferior, there wouldn't have been a problem. Well, maybe only a little one. There was no doubt that if it were him, he could analyze it and tell what kind of medicinal herbs it was made from and more. Maybe the way I went about our first contact was a little mistaken. However, that was the only way to draw out his interest. You could even say that things proceeded this well because I had that. It's also not as if, when I think about the possibility that even the medicine we receive couldn't be analyzed, it would all be a total wash. But now then, what do I do? What's the problem? It didn't look like Ainz would be given very much time to think. In that case, then, just like always, he wouldn't leave things to chance. Certainly, my master also said so your body remembers it. The chief pharmacist nodded his head countless times while faintly muttering, exactly, obviously, the city pharmacists get it too. However, in the same spirit, they also said this. Take proper notes because you're stupid. So you don't make me say the same things over again and over again. Wow. The chief pharmacist's eyes went wide open, and his eyebrows then raised in concern, and asked, stupid you say? Yes, that is what I was told by my master. I see. No, masters are strict with their disciples. I don't think they were saying that seriously, Look, what you were talking about just a little while ago was well-reasoned and was formed to seal off my escape routes. That definitely wasn't something someone stupid could do. I'm being consoled. It seemed that it was also the same for the Dark Elves, that they didn't know what to say when the other party themselves declared, I'm stupid. Because the world they lived in wasn't a kind one, Ainz had thought that he would be cast away, but that didn't appear to be the case. He had complicated feelings about it, but all he could do was capitalize on this. Ainz responded. No, I'm sure there's something wrong with me. My ability to remember things is weak. I see. Ainz asserted it with confidence, and on top of that, the chief pharmacist had averted his gaze, as if his head had been pushed to the side. They both fell silent. There was a fairly good chance that the chief pharmacist would say that there's no way he could teach things that could turn into poison if the amounts were mistaken to someone like him. However, I get it, a voice that sounded like it had accepted something suddenly leaked out of the chief pharmacist. When Ainz was wondering what it was that he got, the chief pharmacist showed an expression that was akin to admiration, but only for an instant. Since it immediately returned to the expression that wouldn't change from a little while ago, it was a momentary change that could make you think that it was a trick of the eye. It definitely wasn't Ainz's imagination. In his head, Ainz slightly braced himself. He didn't know what it was, but it appeared that something inside the chief pharmacist had resonated with what he had said. Ainz felt like he could see a demon he knew very well smiling behind the chief pharmacist. What the hell did I just imagine? That would be really weird, wouldn't it? If that's how it is, then it can't be helped. 7 days at the longest, meaning, there's even a possibility that you'll leave this village even earlier, right? Repeating the same explanations over again means squandering even more of our time. Make sure to burn those records when you've remembered them properly, okay? He didn't know what had caused the change in the chief pharmacist's attitude. While keeping his guard up, Ainz answered as he normally would. Yes, I promise. You get it then. In accordance with your request, I will teach a rather difficult mixture. My instruction will be strict, but you won't cry about it, will you? Ainz didn't remember anything about a request, but even leaving that aside for the moment, this was the only thing he should probably say right at the start. No, please teach me gently. The chief pharmacist's mouth fell open with a pop, and then he made a face that looked like he had swallowed a bitter bug. It wasn't as if Ainz had negative opinions about strict instruction. However, between strict and gentle, he was the sort of person who would choose the latter. You got some nerve. No, but I wouldn't like it if you beat me with a heated pole or something. Your master does things like that. No, they do not do things like that, but even I wouldn't do such a thing like that, alright. I would be very happy if you did not. When Ainz shrugged his shoulders like he was joking, the chief pharmacist looked disgusted. Ha! I think I understand your personality a little bit. Though I also do feel a little sorry for your master. Come on, I'm gonna teach you straight away. From here I'm going to cite the names of several medicines and their effects. If they're ones you know, then it'll be useless. No, they can't be said to be useless. I guess it wouldn't be so bad in the sense that you'll learn about the difference in the ingredients used and more. Well, anyway, tell me which ones you want me to teach you. Thank you very much. However, before that, one question. Are you alright with a verbal agreement? If you were to say, sign a contract or cast some spell, it might be better to just have him pretend that everything they had talked about until now didn't happen. I don't care. Trust is important, right? Who knows, maybe what you put in writing will get passed around and get carried all the way back to me. All that'll happen then is I'll scorn you. So that's the kind of people city pharmacists are is. Well, I'll say. I see, I understand. It's also a big loss for me if the assessment of the city pharmacist was lowered. I absolutely promise not to put them in writing and let them be distributed. Seeing off the back of the man until he was no longer in view, the chief pharmacist let out a soft laugh. How long had it been since he had last seen anyone off? It might have been the first time since he gained the status of chief pharmacist in this village. He is a surprisingly shrewd man. Are there a lot of people like him in that city place? There couldn't be. No, if that were the case, it would be a crazy story. I'd heard that the number of inhabitants in the city was greater than all of the dark elves living in this forest. That man should be counted among the upper echelons of them. If a man who thought that much was common in the city, you would have to be wary of the details so as not to be fooled, wouldn't you? The man humbled himself as a failure and so on, but if that were true he wouldn't run his mouth like that. It was true even more so if he considered the flow of the conversation and the information that had been given to him. He would never go on a fool's errand. If that were so, why had he been so hung up on writing down the chief pharmacist's teachings on paper? Maybe he didn't think the chief pharmacist, who had gotten angry with that, would reject teaching him. However, the reason the chief pharmacist hit upon the idea that he had some kind of objective was because he started saying things like his memory was bad, or calling himself stupid. All the things he was taught, he could secretly write on paper later. In spite of that, it was necessary for him to declare he was going to take notes right in front of the chief pharmacist until it put him in a bad mood. In other words, I didn't get it right away, but what that man wanted to convey to me was probably two things. One was that he's not hiding anything. Of course, he couldn't trust him just like that. It might be that even as the man showed him something true, he could be hiding something else behind that truth. Unfortunately, he couldn't fully trust a man he had met for the first time today, that much. And yet, for him to say, I will not cover anything up, and thus lay my thoughts bare before you, held major significance for potentially building a trusting relationship between them. And finally, the other reason he could never say out loud was probably him asking to be taught an appropriately difficult level of mixture, even given his lack of time. When at the level of definitely not being able to remember no matter how many times he saw it. He, who wasn't even a specialized pharmacist, trying to learn high difficulty level mixtures was outlandish. On top of that, pretty much all of the difficult mixtures utilized only precious medicinal herbs. Maybe it was for that reason he couldn't make a direct request himself. In other words, he was a man who knew shame. However, the chief pharmacist didn't think the second meaning was really a problem. Originally, based on the conditions of the exchange of that unknown medicine which he thought to be related to the one from legend, he had considered it to be okay to offer up his secret medicines. The Dark Elves' secret medicines were split into three major categories. The first one was medicines that could be made through difficult mixing procedures. The second was medicines made utilizing extremely rare medicinal herbs. The third was dangerous drugs that had an excessively potent efficacy. Those were the three. He had stated the first one as the reason why he couldn't pass on the secret medicines to him, but he considered teaching him the medicines that were in the second category. It could be that medicinal herbs that are rare in this region might be abundant in the city or wherever. That was often the case with medicinal herbs. However, if he said that, it wouldn't have gotten them anywhere. Or rather, since those under the first category were impossible to teach him, and there was no way he was going to teach the dangerous drugs in the third category, his answer had already been decided. And in this case, he had also thought there would be a benefit for himself too. He could offer up the ingredients that were rarely found here, and were highly prized even in the city at an appropriate price simultaneously. If he returned to the city, spread the medicines he had been entrusted with, and they became precious materials as a result, then people from the city might come here to the dark elf villages to do business to try and obtain them. When he saw the purple potion, he knew that the city's medicinal use was at an appropriately high level. Having a chance to obtain that material and knowledge, even the chief pharmacist didn't think it sounded so bad. Just from that man's arrival, he didn't know whether or not it would give rise to interactions between the village and the city in the future. However, even if you were to tell him that he should accept the request based on that practical perspective, there would be no doubt that the chief pharmacist would have frankly disagreed with that sentiment instead. If he had had a personality that could be influenced by some rational conversation on the merits and demerits, the villagers probably wouldn't mutter the word obstinate around him, and he probably wouldn't be without a wife at his age. It wasn't as if he didn't worry about it so long as he was esteemed by his fellow pharmacist friends, but as of now, he had yet to give thought to trying and changing himself. That man talked about gains and losses. If it had been way before, it would have been an argument that he couldn't stomach. However, it was about his gains and losses as a pharmacist, interestingly enough. If in some far-off place his efforts as a pharmacist were mocked, he would have no way of knowing. He had no way of knowing, but if you were to ask him if he was okay with that, his answer would be absolutely not. Because he had perceived value in what that man had offered up, he couldn't relax if he didn't return something of equal or greater value. He felt that the man really was a smooth talker, because he had attacked from the two fronts of Logos and Pathos simultaneously. Normally, the one he taught held superior standing while the one who was taught held an inferior standing. However, it wasn't like that this time. Teaching was the price of that potion. What's more, the man had taken the stance of leaving it up to him whether or not he would teach him. At this point, you could say their positions were equal. And that man immediately went on to say that he was going to take notes to open up hostilities. If the other party doesn't hide anything and acts in a way that can gain my trust, then I should also adopt an attitude so that man will trust me. However, that was an extremely different problem. As he was returning to the sitting table, the chief pharmacist scrunched up his face. I don't think I can do something like that. The chief pharmacist himself knew he was bad at getting along with others. Even looking back on the times he had passed on knowledge to the villagers, he could declare that he hadn't been a good teacher. Flicking a glance at the dried leaves, which were a type of narcotic, that were on the medicinal herbs shelf, the chief pharmacist shook his head. That stuff was aimed at easing pain, and could also be used to eliminate stress. However, it wasn't very appropriate for an educator to use it. Nothing else I can do but try my best, huh? The chief pharmacist mumbled. But, well, it seemed like acting wasn't his strong suit. To go so far as to stare at me so hard he even forgot to blink, does it mean that he's that interested in me? Hahaha, looked younger than me based on his looks, but he certainly is young. I guess he did have a pretty cute side to him after all, huh?